everyone, and welcome to another episode of Connecticut at Your Service. My name is Carmen Nieves, and I come to you live each Tuesday at 6:30, where we highlight individuals that are making a difference in their community by the way they serve and champion for others. I can't tell you how excited, I know I tell you that every week, but I am just so excited because the lady that I'm going to introduce and the organization in which we're related to each other by has absolutely transformed my life and helped me do the things that I do. I can't tell you how excited I am to introduce to you my friend, my sister, Melvette Hill, who is a civic leader and social justice champion. I love how she says that. She has over 25 years experience engaging families and communities through her various roles in corporate and government and nonprofits. She's a passionate advocate and avid reader, that I know for a fact. And her work thrives in racial and civic engagement, leadership, and public policy. Melvette, in her role, serves as the director of the Parent Leadership and Family Civic Engagement at the Connecticut General Assembly, Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equities, and Opportunity. And she leads the Parent Leadership Training Institute in Connecticut and works with the National Parent Leadership Institute on policy and partnership and strategies. If that isn't a mouthful, which just tells you the amount of impact that she has in our community. Melvette, as I first welcome,
Thank you.
And the way that I start the show with every show is really to learn about you and how do you lead and what motivates you in through family, your work, and your civic engagements.
Wow. So, Carmen, it is an honor to be sitting here with you. I am truly so enamored by the work that you're doing. So thank you for having me here. I feel honored to be in this space with you.
Thank you.
I was born and raised in New York City, right? In Harlem, New York. And I think I always start there because that was my beginning. And that helped shape who I am today. That's why I'm that racial justice and social justice warrior. That's why I do the work I do, and I get up happy every single day to be alive and to, walk out of my house or maybe to walk into my living room if I'm working from home on Zoom.
The new norm.
And do the work, right? Do the work. And so I think what motivates me is my humble beginnings, right? That I have parents who worked really hard and wanted the best for us. And I think that's what every parent, most parents want the best for their children. Or they want them to have a better situation, a better environment, a better existence than what they had. And so the work I get to do with the Parent Leadership Training Institute and the work around civic engagement with our Connecticut General Assembly allows me to do that. It allows me to help families find their voice and to have access and opportunity in government. So that's the motivator, that every family has an opportunity to be seen and heard and to live their best lives here in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. Make it a better place to live, work, and play.
Yeah.
And as I start with every show, family is really important. And I know how proud you are of your family and the support system that makes leaders thrive. And it doesn't have to be a spouse, but I know that you're married with children. Sorry about that. I know that, your family plays a big role. So tell me a little bit about how do they see you as a leader, and what might be some self-care advice that you can give to leaders to say, take care of the world, but.
Well, I would say that my husband, Donald Hill, is my big supporter. I couldn't do the work I do without him holding it down. We have 4 children. They're now adults, young adults. Okay, and I won't say their ages, but I do have 2 grandsons as well.
Okay.
I will say their names, Josiah and Ellis. They make my heart sing. And I would say that they all know that I'm out there doing something big. That's what my kids said. You're out there doing something big, Mom. I do a lot of travel, and so, both in-state and out-of-state. And I think they would say that I'm fighting for the people. That's what they would say, that she's out there fighting for the people. And so it has made me smile to see that they too have become these warriors, to say. I remember when George Floyd happened, he didn't just happen, he had an existence before he was killed. And I remember when that happened and how my children looked at me, right? Children look at us and they wonder, like, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? That's right.
And I did the best I could. I started saying, how can I be productive? What can I do? And I think that's where parents start. It's understanding what is the one thing that I can do to make a difference. And as I began to use my influence and the little that I had, but sometimes it's a bigger influence, they began to do the thing that was right for them. And so they attended protests, they talked to people. Sometimes, I remember like my daughter was just centering herself, trying to get through the days. So I think they learn by my example. And I always try, I'm not perfect, right? So we're not perfect as parents.
But we learn from,
But we learn, right? Like we stumble, we fall, sometimes we bump our heads, right? And they even watch us in that and how we get back up. And so I think they would say that I'm a fighter, I'm fighting for the people.
I think that that's amazing. And you do that on the local and national level on the different initiatives. Listen, there's so many things that you're involved in, I couldn't even pick one. So tell me a little bit about some of the causes that you, besides PLTI, because we're going to talk a little bit about that. But it shows on here that, you've done child care forums and child tax credit and all those different advocacies. But what are some of your favorites?
So some of my favorites, so one of my favorites, and you were a part of this as well, is a national, I would say, movement of sorts called Weave the People. You and I attended a few years ago back in DC where they brought weavers, we like to call ourselves weavers, from across the country, master networkers, people who make things happen, people who can influence and change. And so the work that I'm doing with them as a community advisor is really special to me because it really is helping them understand how to better serve their Weave community and how to grow it, and then how to strategize around helping people who might be unseen in community who are doing the work, right? And sometimes people are okay doing the work in silence because it means that much to them because they're passionate about it. But it doesn't mean they don't need help and support. And so they try to help and support those people. So that's one of the national things that I'm excited about. But you mentioned the child tax credit. So I have been partnering with an organization who is connected to our Connecticut state work, and it's the American Public Health Services Association, APHSA, I'm sorry. And also in New England, our Administration for Children and Families, they have an initiative called the Whole Family Approach to Jobs. And through that work, we have raised awareness for child tax credit. So we had parents who were trusted messengers talking parent to parent and saying, you need to file your taxes so you can get this money, right? Get this credit. Also, we did that around the census as well. And we are now building, through our 2-generational initiative in the state, which focuses on family economic mobility, we're now building a baby bonds advisory of parents.
Tell me a little bit. I'm sorry, I have to stop at that, because I got $7,000.
Yes.
Well, I will have $7,000, and I think that I building generational wealth.
Yes.
And how do we move that forward? So please tell me a little bit. Right. I had to stop you there.
Right. So, so with Cory Booker and other Congress folks. Derek Hamilton, who is the genius behind the whole idea about baby bonds, and it's really closing that racial wealth gap. So we know that people of color don't have access to or able to have the same type of wealth, building wealth opportunities as others, as our dominant groups. And baby bonds was legislation that was passed a few years ago in Connecticut. And really what it is it's an opportunity for those who wouldn't have an opportunity, and this is I would say our most challenged folks with income, right? People who maybe have Medicare, their baby is born under Husky. Those folks are able to get $3,200 put into an investment account, and their children are able to access that money that will grow over 18 to 30 years. and they're able to access that money to use it to buy a house, to start a business, to go to college, right? And so, so we're doing that work. So in our state, we've pushed it off for a couple of years, but we're building some public awareness around it, and we really want to have parents involved in helping our state treasurer understand how to reach out to families and how to tell them about it.
We're going to start talking about PLTI in just a second, but I just feel like there's a good moment to pause and talk about Melvette. How do we reach you to find out more information about the different initiatives and the things like that that you're doing to improve the lives of children and families?
So one way you can reach out to me is at CTPLTI, so Connecticut PLTI, CTPLTI. That's on Instagram and on Facebook. We have pages, and then, you know, you can just Google me and find me. I'm out there. Just, you know, hit me up.
Melvette Hill.
Right.
I just think that you're just so amazing. So I want to spend a little bit of time to talk about your work with the Parent Leadership Training Institute, because this is a transformational program, and I know that you guys, and I quote Patty Kekison all the time because I hear her say it all the time, and Donna Thompson-Bennett, who's the executive director on the national level, but talking about that, we help parents and leaders who care becomes parents and leaders who lead. Yeah. So please tell a little history about that. How can people engage, and some of the ways that, a lot of questions, but I'm gonna just let you run with it. Yeah. All the ways that, I don't wanna say ordinary people, because people aren't ordinary. They have strengths that they didn't know that they had until you're faced against something that you gotta push back on. So tell me a little bit about PLTI on both a local and national level, and how can people engage? Okay, so PLTI began in Connecticut, if you can imagine, 30 years ago. So in 1992, it was created by Elaine Zimmerman at the Commission on Children. And really, it was about families having voice in our government. And parents didn't think that their voices mattered. And when she did these focus groups around the state, parents would say, but I'm just a parent. They had the best ideas, but they felt no one was listening to them. And so after this tour of focus groups, where it wasn't just parents, but it was also the librarian and the police chief and the custodian and whoever else cared about children in the community, she put together a course that was 10 weeks that was really about helping families to build their personal leadership skills. And then parents said, we want more, we would like more, thank you. And she extended it to include those democracy, skill building things, the toolkit, where people understand how to be advocates and how to create change, how to understand local and state government. And so here we are 30 years later. We have PLTI that's been implemented in about 18 communities over 30 years. Of course, it is going strong in Bridgeport, Connecticut for 25 years now, as well as Danbury and Stamford and other places. But it is amazing. You and I are both graduates of PLTI. Bridgeport strong. Where was Danbury? Your I was Danbury in Danbury. Hello, Danbury alumni. And but we are the fruit of the labor of those who planted the seed for us to have access and opportunity, right? And so I think what's important is that people understand when we talk about PLTI or the Parent Leadership Training Institute, really, it's a family civics initiative because we have children's leadership training as well. And so children and parents are learning the same content week after week together over 20 weeks, right? And people are like, well, parents won't do that for 20 weeks. We've been doing it for 30 years now. Yes, they will. Attendance. Right, we will. People do it. And the CLTI component is literacy based. So each child gets a book that they get to go home with each week that is relevant to the curriculum. And it's really nice. It's really a nice pairing. And I can tell you it's evidence based, and the results and the outcomes are amazing. Year after year, our pre and post survey results tell us that when people start PLTI and when they end PLTI, they are dramatically different. It's taller. A life journey. They're taller in their knowledge, sure. Right? And so it's really exciting that I get to do that work here in Connecticut. And as you said, Donna Thompson-Bennett leads the work outside of Connecticut.
implementing PLTI, and can you imagine it's in 70 communities right now, and it's also in Brisbane, Australia.
What?
Yes.
Are they in Puerto Rico yet? Because I want to go over there.
Well, we just need some folks in Puerto Rico to tell us to come, and we will come. Yes.
So this is just absolutely amazing. So the program is 20 weeks, and it works with children and families, and they have an idea that they bring to fruition of how they can change. And one of the things, and I quote it all the time, that it talks about how do we create change first, self, family and community. And one of the things that we talk about in the training is how, I'm scared to be a champion for me, but when you talk about my babies, it's a whole, parents find this strength. Even, and not every leader in the Parent Leadership Training Institute is a parent. And I quote Donna all the time when she says, that child was birthed in my heart. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we are in Connecticut. How many PLTI communities do we have? Or are we going to be starting, and the training is when? Remind us, when is the training?
So the training starts every year in January. So we're getting ready for our January cohort. And this cohort for 2023 coming up is Bridgeport, Danbury, Stamford, Norwalk, Naugatuck, Middletown, and West Hartford. So we have 7 cohorts.
So 7. So if somebody wants to be engaged and maybe they don't live in any of those communities, maybe they work in that community or they're a caregiver or whatever in that community, can they participate as well?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in your role, kind of, you are kind of, we say in PLTI, like the glue person of yes. all the PLTIs throughout the state. So each unit is made, because are they volunteers? Are they,
Right. So each PLTI community has a site coordinator, and those site coordinators then work with our facilitators. We have PLTI facilitators. Our facilitators go through an intensive in-person training that's 4 days, where they have like a full immersion of PLTI. I can't give away the details because it's a secret. It's a secret.
It's right? A secret sauce.
And so those are some of the components of PLTI, but really you and I both know that the secret sauce is really our civic design team, which some people might consider like a board. We really don't consider it a board. It really is a group of people who are invested in PLTI, who want to see it implemented with fidelity, and then they want to sustain it in community. So PLTI is not a program. It's an initiative, it's a movement, it's something that you start and then you support, right? And that's why Bridgeport has been doing it for 25 years, Danbury 25 years, Stamford 25 years, because those civic design teams really were invested in ensuring that there was funding, that there was support. Bridgeport, we know there's a list that goes out, and it's like, we need tablecloths, we need cups, we need someone who's going to provide food. So it really takes a village to ensure that PLTI is up and running in communities.
So I love how you were talking about that, because people work all day, and this is a program that's usually at night, right?
Yes.
So you take away the barriers. There's no reason not to lead other than you just need to have an interest, because we've had leaders that come in, I'm about this park, and it's like, no, it's really about the street sign on the end of my block that people are getting hurt there, and how do we take a look at it, and how do we find out details about it, because once things are actual facts, you can't fight that. And look at that, we've got a call.
We've got a call.
Hello and welcome to Connecticut at your service. Do you have a question for our guest?
Hi, yes. I was watching your show and I was just wondering, what kind of mindset do you guys think that our community should be putting on for our children and for the parents to further our community?
Do you want to take that? I'll take it.
No, please start. But I think it's for you.
So I think the mindset really it's individual, right? It's individualized. Everyone will have something that they want for their children, something that's important to them. And so my needs for my family in Danbury, in my community, could be different than someone else's needs in their community, in their neighborhood. And so I think the mindset is about change. Is there change needed, and are you willing to be the change agent?
You know, and I think we just want people to step up and just say, listen, I don't know how I'm going to make a difference, but I do want to be a change maker. What does that look like? And I will tell you that it's so grassroots. Like, I remember Yolanda, and this is not a friend of mine who's a PLTI parent leader, but her thing, that her project was, she was a returning citizen. So her project was her inmate number and how she was making a difference through her lived experience. You know, and the first 10 weeks talks about just our personal, like, how do we learn leadership? Because leadership is very different for different people. And it even talks about that people don't have to lead in the same way, but let's meet you where you are about something that you're passionate about. And then the last 10 weeks says, how do you create change through that? And I think that it just takes one person to say, listen, this is what I want to do, whether it's books or seatbelts or parent engagements or when COVID happened, I remember that some of the projects were around how do we get face masking, cleaning disinfectants and stuff like that for the teachers. And I remember that you had done a bunch of like focus, I don't know if they were focus group, but you had parents call in and talk about how is COVID affecting your child's education? Tell me a little bit about that, because we participated in that and it was very impactful.
Right, so I think we had a parent policy table that focused on education and how COVID was affecting, or how people were managing through and how they had managed through at that time. And it's really important sometimes for us to get together and just discuss, like just throw ideas on the wall, throw our problems on the wall, because also in that space are the solutions. And we always believe that the people in the room have the answers. If we don't talk about these things together, then we don't know our assets. We don't know that, oh, Carmen had this experience and this is how she managed to get through it. So we do, in our national work with the National Parent Leadership Institute, Donna's team, we do a lot of parent policy tables where we focus on having the voice of parents lead the table, right? Because it's the parents' table, and then inviting policymakers, inviting legislators and people who lead agencies to come and listen, right? Instead of them leading the table and then having parents talk about the issues. We have the parents present, here's what we feel the problems are, here could be the solutions, and how can you make that happen? So it's an exciting part of the work to do that.
And you help them with all the pieces, like if you have an idea, how are you gonna let people know about it? How do you market it? You know, if you need resources, what resources do you need, and help them develop that ask. And they have like these power sessions where they have other parent leaders come in and be kind of like mentors with their projects. I'm telling you, there isn't enough of whatever it is. We could have 10 projects on recycling and they all tend to look like a little bit different.
That's right.
With a different focus. What is your favorite part about this helping people be the leaders they were meant to be?
That's really hard. That's a hard question. I think one of my favorite parts is when people have their aha moments. And those aha moments come at different times, but seeing the aha, right? Seeing their eyes light up, or seeing it show on their face or in their body language where they've come to a realization based on the content or based on some new self-discovery. I can tell you when people graduate from PLTI, their accomplishments could be different, right? There might be a person who has a project and they're working on a legislative bill, but there's also that person who's making a decision and a change within their home. And that project is as important as that legislative bill, right? It's really seeing what that change looks like for each individual person based on their own capacity, based on their own hopes and dreams, based on the change that they want to see in themselves, their family, or their community.
I think where I see, and I love how you talk about that aha moment, because there's a shift that happens in the second part of the training where we start bringing in like legislators and policymakers and mayors of communities, and they want to take the pictures, and they get a chance to go around and talk about what are their projects, and these mayors remember. Like I distinctly remember like in Stanford that she remembered, and as she was going around, and that's Mayor Simmons, which I love, so if you're watching, shout out to you.
Yes.
But she was going around, and as each person was sharing what their project idea was, she was right there giving them resources immediately.
Yes.
You know, and leaders that come through, they sit on boards and our commissions, and just even like if you're gonna go testify or you're advocating to get money for education, just how they would walk in a room like wearing the same shirt.
Right.
You know, and I remember listening to people in the audience be like, who are they? Who are they? You know, and there's something that happens when you say, my name is Carmen Nieves, and I'm a Bridgeport Parent Leaders, that people that know that gravitate, and it's almost like an instant connection in whatever community they're in because they're PLTI too.
Right.
And they know what that means. Have you seen that as well?
I have, and I mean, the network is amazing. And one of the things I would say I really enjoy about my position and my job and my role is the access and opportunity part. So we have, 100 to 150 graduates each year approximately. And then I get to understand what their community projects are. And I can try to connect them to other people within the state. So it might be another parent leader, because you mentioned there could be 20 recycling projects. All of them are different sometimes. And so sometimes we have these affinity groups of people who have similar interests around projects. But also, when you talked about boards and commissions, we have access and opportunity. There's so many commissions in the state, and when people are looking for parents, I'm like, oh, I know 5 parents who would serve well on that board, right? And they understand how to engage, right? Because it just went through this 20-week curriculum. So I think I really enjoyed that part. And not only connected them to opportunities here in the state, but nationally, especially like with our work with NPLI, and also regionally with ACF, the Administration for Children and Families.
I just think that everything that PLTI stands for, and it's a program that parents, leaders don't have to pay. They're providing dinner so that when you come home, you're going right to the training. So they do a leadership component. Your children get a book. They're learning the same thing that parents are learning. Melvette, people can reach Melvette on Facebook and Instagram at CTPLTI, but is there any last minute for about 30 seconds that you want to say to our viewers?
I would say the most important thing I want you to walk away with or understand about me is that I get to wake up every day and do this work, and I love it. I am so honored and blessed to be able to meet parents all, from all different races, backgrounds, ethnicities, religions, and help them understand how to engage in our democracy and how to be civic leaders, but also helping them to understand that they're not just parents, but they are leaders, and they're leading for their families, and they're doing the best they can. And what we all need to do is come together and support each other and work together.
And embrace ideas.
Yeah.
So, Melvette, thank you so much. Thank you. I want to uplift PLTI and all the people associated, parent leaders that we've had on the show. I want to thank you for coming in today. I want to thank all our viewers, our guests, our friends, our supporters of Connecticut at Your Service. We come to you live each Tuesday at 6:30, and we want to make sure that you keep on watching. We'll see you next week.